The other thing about your yard is you really do want to keep the water in your yard, especially when it hasn't rained for a while. So if we get a downpour right now, all the water that hits that yard is just going to run off into the street. It will hardly get in the soil at all because the soil has been compacted. And you know, when you look at this sand, what you can do is go in your yard, get a mason jar, any kind of jar that's about that big, fill it up with sand, with your dirt, what you call your dirt. Just fill it up and then pour water in it until it's full of water. Put the lid on it, shake it up really good, and just let it sit. And what happens is the certain particles will fall down, and then the next size particle will go down, and the next size, and the next size, and you'll see exactly how big and what percentage of grit is in your yard. This particular sand is very fine sand. And so what it does is when it crusts over. So when you're watering and you water and you water and you water and you think you've watered, if it hasn't rained in a while or that wasn't moist to begin with, that water basically is just going to run off, because what happens is those little tiny ones cement in between the little much bigger ones, and it just creates a sheet. So your water is running off. So what you've got to do, until you really know what you're doing, is you've got to take your finger and just poke it down in there and move it away and see if did the water really go in or not. Because your plants will die pretty quick if you think you're watering and you're not watering. Or if you think they need water and they don't. When it's midsummer and you're this plant, well, not this plant, but say you're, what would be out here in the midsummer? Squash. The squash is like, huh. And you think, oh, it's wilting, I need to water it. So you go out and water it. The next day, huh, you water it again. Next day, huh, you water it, and then it's dead. Why? You overwatered it, and the roots rotted out. What it's doing when it does that is, you got to think of a balloon. The water in the plant is like air in a balloon. It pushes the leaves up. So, bringing in the water, but when it gets really hot, these things actually open up little pores underneath and let water out, and the water goes up and creates a little bit of a environment for it to be a little cooler. But it does that, you know, and what happens is it's not getting enough water fast enough, so it's losing water pressure, and that's why it loses water pressure. It can't hold itself up and it wilts. It's not that it doesn't have water in the soil. It's that it's not bringing the water in fast enough to deal with the evaporation that's coming off of it. So, once again, test your soil. What you'll notice is if you really know your garden and you take a look, it's like the same plant, after you have not watered at 5, 6 o'clock at night, it's back up again, because it's not evaporating so quickly and it's taking stuff in. And one of the big pest things we have here is not root, nematodes. K-N-O-T, root. They call it that because when you pull up your plant, it's got bumps all over it, a diseased plant. It's just like, it's gone. You pull it up, always check your roots, find out, because it'll tell you a lot. If you got these nematodes on it, what they've done is they've blocked the root from taking in nutrients, and they're just eating the nutrients that the plant's trying to bring to itself, and they're on the roots. So what happens is, that's another reason why they can't get enough water into their body, because the nematodes are using it. And you can kill nematodes by solarizing your soil, but if you do that, you absolutely sterilize your soil, and all the beneficial things that are in the soil that have symbiotic relationship from the plants for eons, they're dead. So the plant can't use whatever relationship it was getting out of those things. It doesn't get it anymore. So, you know, most books I've read that deal with organic gardening in a natural way, they say just don't do that. Don't solarize your soil. So what do you do about the nematodes? One is you learn what their conditions are. They love really wet stuff to grow in. So if you have an area that's prone to nematodes, don't overwater to begin with. The plant might survive you overwatering it, but the nematodes will just thrive, and then they'll get onto the plant and do it in. The other thing is nematodes. compost has organisms in it that eat those nematodes. So the richer your compost is, the more things you put in it to make it whatever it is, the more likely it is to be abundant in this organism that's already there, that's just going to eat those knotroot nematodes. So if you were to plant in this soil and you take the same plant from the same seed stock and everything and you plant right next to it but in a pot full of compost, this won't have any nematodes, and that one will be loaded with nematodes because it's unimproved soil and it doesn't have the other things in it. You see that berm around there? This is a little hump. When I was talking about the water running off, you create a swale, I think they call it, so that the water runs this way in this yard and it won't go over that dike. So it's going to settle right there, and I'm going to keep the water. My pump is right there, so any water I keep in this yard that percolates down is good for me. I don't want it just to run off, go into the sewer lines and go out into the bay, which is what it does. It's just a waste of rain.